Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums today with a Pick a Pile readings video. I hope that this reading brings you some clarity and some guidance with the things that you may have going on at the current moment, as well as something to work through and look forward to. So today we're going to have pile number 1 is right here, the Spacious Tarot. Pile number 2 is going to be the Astara Tarot, and pile number 3 is going to be the Rosebud Tarot. A little springy vibe that I tried to choose. So hopefully you choose whichever deck you feel drawn to, and then check out the timestamps in my description box to see where your reading starts. So I'll see you in your reading. Enjoy. Thanks. So hello, pile number 1. I really hope this reading brings you clarity. So let's see what the cards have in store for you and what your message is today. Pile number 1. Let's see. First we have the Explorer of Pentacles, or the Knight of Pentacles. And we have, I want this one, the Hermit reversed, the Eight of Wands reversed, the Guardian of Swords reversed. Lots of reverse cards today. And finally, the Emperor upright. So we'll start off with these guys, and then maybe, I don't know, should we add some oracle cards today? What are we feeling? Give me a second. Okay, I decided to grab a couple decks. So let's see. This is the Nature Nurture Oracle by Marcella Kroll. So here we have the Lion with leadership. And then I'm also going to pull from the Mystic Rebels Oracle by Zoe Greco. Let's see what we have here. We have Stand Your Ground. And I kind of feel like I want to pull something else too. So give me one more second. Let me try to pick another deck. All right, I kind of felt like I wanted to use the Loteria Remedios Oracle by Zelina Gonzalez. So we have El Violoncello, or the cello. So we'll see what that means and what we have going on with it. Because again, I haven't really used this deck too much. I kind of forget how many decks that I have. And so I don't always pull everything, and use everything as much as I would like. So let's go like this and kind of have everything in frame. All right. So let's start with our tarot cards. So today we have the Knight of Pentacles kind of kicking off things. I think that this may represent that maybe we've been really thoughtful as far as what we're planning to do, trying to be a little bit more methodical, a little bit more strategic, so to speak, as far as like what we are investing our time into at this current moment. So this could be with career, this could be with our finances, this could be with our physical home, our physical spaces. This can be in relation to even like our physical selves, like our health, our behaviors, our kind of how we're showing up in physical ways in the world. And so I think that this card is kind of saying like maybe at this current moment, we're under the impression that we can only really control ourselves. We can't really control how other people will receive us. Maybe there's a message in this energy for us that we just need to be aware of how we're showing up and what we are doing versus being too caught up in what is going on around us, and just kind of keeping that and maintaining that steady focus, that continuous way of showing up for ourselves in this manner. I think the other thing with the Knights is that they kind of tend to bring a little bit of this, like, I want to kind of go out there and search and find and discover something in the world. With Pentacles, it's going to be much more of like the physical element. So this may be a good time to look at our health routines, to look at our physical lives. Maybe this is a great time to kind of reconsider what we call home and what we have in our spaces and what makes us feel comfortable. So there is a little bit of this kind of energy that's kind of saying like maybe we're being called to be more aware of like what we're surrounding ourselves with and what that means for us in general. Now, having the Knight of Pentacles kind of backing up the Hermit reversed, I think that this can be maybe an understanding that this last little eclipse that we had in Virgo may feel like things are still not really conclusive. Things may not feel very clear. The thing with eclipses is that they do bring clarity in certain ways, but it's always because of something unexpected. So maybe we're still kind of waiting to see what really is coming together, what really is happening with this situation, what really is the focus. Maybe we haven't been as intuitively connected and seeking ourselves out as much as we should. So I think that this is almost saying like, are you taking the time out to kind of reconnect with yourself? Are you taking some time out to kind of understand what it is that feels the more in alignment with what it is that you're trying to do and how you're trying to show up for yourself? So I think with the Hermit here, especially kind of being in the middle of everything, is that maybe we feel like it's hard to kind of tune back in. Maybe we feel a little disconnected from our intuition. Maybe we feel like it's not really something we can truly, really rely on at the current moment, or that it's a little bit hard because we're so distracted by the material and the physical things that are happening, or the sense of, I just need to hurry up and like choose something, or I need to hurry up and just kind of figure out what it is that I'm doing at the current moment. I think the other thing with the Hermit is that maybe it's saying that we have forgotten how to rely on ourselves in the sense of shining our own light and really finding our own path that way. When I think of the Hermit reverse, I think that it is very much this energy that says like there's a disconnection, there's maybe a lack of foundational trust that what you choose and what you're doing is going to be exactly what you need to be doing. I think a lot of us feel like we have to always get it right, or that we have to have it all figured out. And unfortunately, that's just not how life is, right? That's not how we gain experience. That's not how we go through things. And so I think the Hermit is kind of here saying like, hey, like, why do you feel like you have to have everything the right way? Maybe you need to kind of lean back into understanding what your strengths are, what you understand, what you've overcome, what, you know, allowed you to really start to trust yourself a little bit more. Maybe you've kind of disconnected a little bit from that energy. So I think the Hermit here, especially reversed, is kind of saying like, maybe we need to not feel like we need to seek outside guidance for what it is that we want and need in our lives. Now, moving on, we have the Eight of Wands reversed. Again, this can just feel like a slowdown. Things are not really moving in the direction that we had intended. Maybe things are just not really coming together the way that we had anticipated. And I think that this is just very much like this Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde energy, like, you know, Neptune moving into Aries. It's like a lot of these astrological moments in March were intense. It was very heavy astrology. It was very, I don't want to just say like it's very personal, but it's also like it was very draining in so many different ways. Energetically, we're just not feeling like we have the power to kind of follow through in some ways. And so that may also be a reason why we're questioning, you know, what path am I on? Am I doing the right things? Am I, you know, really doing something that feels in alignment with myself, especially when I feel like there has been no progress made? So I think the Eight of Wands reverse is very poignant here, because it's almost saying like we can't have a direction to go into and find our second wind if we haven't really allowed ourselves to kind of figure out what we're initially going after and what we're fighting for and what it is that we really desire. So we need to kind of reconnect to the hermit's energy of like kind of seeking out our own wisdom, really leaning and learning how to trust our own personal intuition so that we can really figure out where we're headed and where this energy is really taking us and what we're going to do once we get there. The Eight of Wands is very much about that creative passion, that essentially finding not just like the stability for the energy of what it is that you want, but it's also very much saying like, hey, what is it that you've been fighting towards? What is it that you've been, going into? What is it that like really speaks to you at this time? Because I think the biggest energy here is that it's almost saying like, what is it that we've been focusing on? And if we don't really have a clear direction or a clear kind of end goal, it makes it very challenging for us to kind of say, all right, I'm going to keep heading towards this. So I think a lot of us are kind of facing a little bit of indecision, maybe feeling like we're questioning some of the choices that we've been making, or maybe we felt like we were going to head in one direction and now we have kind of like pulled back on that energy, or maybe we're kind of questioning a little bit of that, which I think is completely normal, especially as we're, kind of going day by day, seeing how things are unfolding. And that's another thing that tends to happen with eclipses, is that we are presented with something that maybe we weren't anticipating. There is an unexpected sort of energy that comes with the eclipses. And so we're maybe feeling a little bit more reserved, a little bit more of like internalizing what it is that we really want and what it is that really is speaking to us at this moment. Now, underneath we have the Guardian of Swords reversed. Now, I think that this is almost kind of saying like, hey, this is that Queen of Swords energy, this being reversed. Again, maybe we're not using that mental acuity and clarity to be a little bit more external with this energy, if that makes sense. Maybe we're kind of overthinking, overanalyzing, being a little bit highly critical of ourselves. Maybe we've forgotten what our truth really feels like and sounds like to us. And so it can make it a little bit disjointed again, where we don't really know what is true in our situation. The thing is that sometimes truth, it can be multiple things. It doesn't have to be just one singular truth, right? It is X, Y, and Z and A, B, C, which can both be good things or bad things. It can be a mixture. It can be an oxymoron. It can be very bittersweet. And so I think the Guardian of Swords here, or this Queen of Swords reversed energy, is kind of saying like, it's hard for us to find that clarity and that connection to what it is that we're doing, because right now we're just a little bit mentally jumbled up. We haven't really taken some time out to connect to ourselves. Maybe we've just been very focused on the like being too cutting, basically. Or maybe we're just not cutting away enough from things that aren't really in alignment with who we are and what it is that we would like to do. I know for me this month, in March, I just felt super mentally drained. I didn't really want to think. I didn't really want to focus as far as like making decisions and making choices and having to be very like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It was very like, I'm just trying to get through the motions. I'm just trying to get through the day and reset and restart for the following day. And that's not really a good way to go through life, is to just kind of be on autopilot. And so I think that the Guardian of Swords here is kind of saying maybe right now we've mentally checked out in some ways. And so we're being more critical of ourselves versus really understanding what is going on in our external life that maybe is creating this very heavy mental load in so many different ways. And so maybe right now we just feel like we can't really speak our truth. Maybe we feel like we can't really show up as ourselves because maybe other people won't always receive it. And I know for a lot of people, it is hard to feel like you can say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm thinking. Because other people, especially I think with everything that's been in this like Pisces stellium right now, where there is a high sensitivity. There's a sense of a lot of illusions and people not really seeing things quite so clearly. So it can be very hard if you're like, I'm just trying to cut to the truth of the situation. And the thing with this is that while the Queen of Swords is typically like, you know, truth and justice and empowerment and just kind of like showing up and saying what needs to be said, regardless of what emotions it may stir up, this can feel very much like we're redirecting this energy towards ourselves and maybe being in some ways a little bit unkind and maybe not quite so honest about what is actually the root of what we're feeling and what we have going on in this situation. So I think the Guardian of Swords is kind of like taking a lot of this other reversed card energy and kind of saying like, okay, what are we going to do with this? Like, we need to do something with this and kind of move forward. Finally, we have the Emperor, which is funny because we are in Aries season, and this is the tarot card associated with Aries. I think that this is kind of saying like, once we have been a little bit more clear with ourselves, and not to say like cut ourselves up to shreds about it, but really just kind of moving into our truth, really understanding what's like driving us, really understanding, you know, our intuitive impulses within things, and understanding that we need to build a strategy. The Emperor is almost here as like the reward of like, all right, everything's going to come together. Everything is going to fall into place. Now, the thing with the Emperor is that it is very much a card of like showing up in leadership, but it can be a little bit of a dominating energy. So it is almost saying like, are you trying to just dominate the situation, or are you trying to show up in this kind of energy of like saying, hey, like, I want to show up in the ways that are necessary to kind of lead from this point, to really be aware of like the foundation that I've put into place and the things that are kind of growing that will be able to sustain me moving forward. So I think with the Emperor, it is like that divine masculine energy, and it can be very much about like that nurturing that sort of relationship and connection within yourself, whether that's how are you using the divine masculine tools within yourself to kind of create the life that you would like for yourself. How are you showing up in this energy to say, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is what makes me happy, this is how I'm going to continue moving forward in this. I think the Emperor can be very much this energy that can feel a little bit like we need to kind of be very like, I don't want to say aggressive, but maybe assertive in the things that we want. And while it does kind of point to that sort of energy, it is almost saying like, but in a way that isn't to be like dominating, right? It is about showing up and saying, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want, and this is how it's going to be, and this is how I would ideally like it to kind of work out. And also having an understanding that you are the one that's kind of establishing this foundation for yourself moving forward. So I think with the Emperor, kind of finishing up our little tarot cards here, there is this energy that's kind of saying like, how can we show up in this energy and really be authentic to what speaks to us, while also essentially knowing what is going to lead us forward, and really plant the seeds for what it is that we want for the long term and for the future. I think that this can also be a time where we feel like we need to kind of buckle down, be a little bit more serious about what we're doing, because now we're in the 4th month of 2025. So I think a lot of us start to get this like, oh, I need to like hurry up and see what the heck I'm doing, and kind of see where this is leading and what's going on with everything. Which is crazy when you really think about it, because I feel like this year has been so long, but also so short, if that makes sense. I've just been really busy. And I think that's another thing that's kind of contributing to this like feeling of like time warpiness of like, there's like an elastic kind of feeling to time right now is what it feels like for me. So I think it's interesting that we have these 2 cards. For our oracle cards, we have Lion, which is all about leadership, and then we have Stand Your Ground, which I think are very much, again, Emperor energy. So they're almost saying like, this is what we're trying to move into. The very first card with Lion, I think that it's really reminding us of our personal power. Maybe this is a time where we need to understand that no one is going to show up for us and take us where we need to go. We're the ones that need to say, hey, this is the decision that I'm making. This is what I'm doing. And this is what I want it to look like. So I think Lion is kind of saying, where is it that you need to lead yourself into? What is it that maybe you feel you need to kind of get into within this element of yourself? And I think leadership is something that can come very naturally to certain sorts of characters and personalities. I am not one of those people. I'm very much like a just do whatever you want to do, don't bother me kind of vibe, which I know for me personally, I have really struggled with just this sort of energy. And so I wonder how many more of us are kind of feeling like it's hard for us to be in a position of leadership, whether it's in our own lives, whether it's in the community, whether it's like, whatever, online, whatever you may call it. And so maybe we're questioning a lot of these different things about what it means to lead, what it means to be at the front of the pack, so to speak. And I think the lion is also a representation of we take what we need and then we rest when we are satiated. So I think right now it's almost saying like, okay, maybe you've been resting. So now it's time to kind of get out there and really get what it is that you need so that things can really move in the direction of your purpose and for you to feel a little bit more in alignment with the things that are happening around you. Now, standing your ground is what it sounds like. Maybe this is a point in time where you really need to be honest with yourself and really say, this is what matters to me. This is what I value. This is what I want, what I need. And I think so many of us tend to struggle with doing that in various elements of our lives because we may feel like we're going to disappoint someone. We may feel like other people may judge us. We may feel like other people may not understand. And I'm not saying that standing your ground is the easiest route to go about things. It's not. It can be very challenging. It can feel very much like you're being ostracized in some ways, or maybe feeling like you're very lonely as you're standing your ground and as you're trying to kind of, set those boundaries and kind of say like, this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to look like. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of us forget that we're the ones that get to dictate how our lives go in so many different ways. I'm not saying that we can control everything because we can't. A lot of things are outside of our control, and that's fine. But we get to choose how we're going to overcome and how we're going to react to the things that may happen that are outside of our control, or the things that may happen in our lives that may feel like they are influenced by other things outside of us. So I think with standing your ground, it's almost saying like, you need to understand how powerful you truly are and kind of move back into that energy with yourself. Stop questioning yourself so much. Stop feeling like you're not allowed to have these things be what you want them to be, if that makes sense. And so I think that standing your ground is just that reminder. It's also like a part of leadership is to kind of say like, no, this is how it's going to be. This is what we're going to do. Now I'm going to look up what this violoncello means, because again, it's not a deck I use too often. So let's see what it says. So embrace, grounding, and voice. So I think it's interesting because when I think of the cello, and I don't remember if the cello is like the bigger one, I'm pretty sure it's not. Maybe it is. I don't remember. I'm like, I know one of them is like really big and one of them is like not as big, but it's still big. Like you can't just like throw it on your shoulder. So this is almost telling you like making sure that your grounding is secure, that you have everything that you need, because it's going to require some work on your behalf. And maybe you need to reclaim your voice. Maybe you need to kind of understand, how you're feeling about things. Like, have you voiced your current, not to say upsets, but maybe your current concerns, your current, thoughts? Have you been speaking aloud the things? Have you been, really sharing your own voice in different ways? And so I think that this is a reminder that maybe your voice is necessary and needed, and you need to find the right audience that is going to allow you to speak, to find your voice, to kind of connect a little bit more to the throat chakra, to really understand that you need to ground yourself and kind of understand what it is that you're carrying with you, whether that is like the emotional baggage that's been kind of holding you back in some ways, or maybe that is just the mental baggage that a lot of us are carrying, the stress of everything. I mean, just with what's going on in the world, it's very hard to have, like these ideas of what this is going to look like over the course of the next few years, and having to like have this understanding that life may be changing in ways that we will never be able to get back to. And so I think with the violoncello, it's almost telling us like, we need to find our voice. We need to kind of connect a little bit more to that energy, because that is what's going to allow us to show up in very authentic ways, especially when we are trying to stand our ground and whenever we are kind of being called into leadership. We need to find our voice, and we need to be grounded, and we need to understand what it is that we're carrying so that we are not distracted and taken aback by what other people have to say to us or how others speak to us. It's really about kind of finding our truths so that we can really be in that leadership position. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me, pile number one. I really hope that this reading brings you some clarity and some guidance. I really hope that things continue to move on and up for you. Please take care, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Hello, pile number two. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that this reading finds you well and that it brings you some clarity and some guidance. So let's see what we have for you today. Oh. Two of them wanted to pop out. All right, so we have the Fool and the Page of Pentacles. And now we have the Two of Cups. Let's see if we can get these to look a little straight here. We have the King of Pentacles. And then I actually think I want this one. And then Justice. All right, let's move those up a little bit. Maybe I'll have to zoom out a little bit so that there's some more space on here. Okay, and I'm also going to pull a couple oracle cards. So let's see. We have Transformation. We're going to get one of these little guys over here. Transformation, and then we'll have the Seer, the Owl, and then finally one more little guy from the Loteria Remedios Oracle. Let's see. We have the Lady. We'll put her over here. Okay. La Dama, or the Lady. Okay, so let's see. So since we just had a couple jumpers, let's start with the very first one. So here we have the Fool, which is essentially the beginning, right? It's almost saying maybe you're finally in a position, in a place where you want to trust things, where you're opening yourself up to the possibility that things need to shift, or you're ready to kind of step off and basically choose your own adventure in some different ways. But the thing with the Fool is that not only is it a major card, it really portends to the energy of a new beginning and having that trust, that sense that if you leap, the net will appear and things will fall into place the way that they should. And so I think the biggest thing with the Fool here is that it is a reminder that you are the one that gets to choose how you kind of follow through on this next part of your journey. So whether that is just having the sense that things are maybe falling into place, or maybe you're ready to kind of go out there and do something different and kind of change it up a little bit, there is this sense of independence, but then there's also the understanding that you just don't know what you don't know. And there is going to be a little bit of the sense of maybe feeling like you're kind of pulling back in some ways, and maybe you feel like things are not really not quite so clear how things are going to work out or how you're going to get to where you would like to. It's very much a card about like that sense of like that hope and just kind of stepping out into something without really knowing how things are going to fall into place. So there is a little bit of this kind of energy that's kind of saying like, okay, we're ready to kind of go out there and do something different. We don't want to keep remaining where we are. We want to change how things are at this moment. Next to that, we got the Page of Pentacles, which again, I kind of look at the pages as like little fools. So they have that similar energy of like that positive expectancy of like starting off, doing something new, maybe having a lack of experience that doesn't allow you to really like feel connected to what it is that you're doing. But the thing with the pentacles is that it is a little bit more of a slow moving energy. It can be very much focused on like the physical things. So this can talk about our space. It can talk about our body. It can talk about our behaviors. It can talk about, you know, our work, our career, our finances. Things of that nature are ruled by the energy of pentacles. And so we're almost kind of reminded that we have to kind of take a chance as we're kind of moving into this next thing, even if we don't always know exactly how it's going to turn out or how it's going to be. So I think the Page is also letting us know that maybe we're wanting to kind of like step into something new. So maybe there's a new job opportunity, maybe there's a new career that you've been thinking about, maybe there's a new way for you to kind of align yourself with things that feel more energetically matching, if that makes sense, as far as like with what it is that you want for yourself long term. So it's almost saying like, what seeds are you planting? What sort of things are you kind of chasing after? What sort of things make the most sense for you at this point in time? And how can you really step into that energy a little bit more fully? And then next to that, we have the Two of Cups, which this is a card of, I like to look at it as like love coming together, but then there's also this beautiful energy of like finding that balance, that harmony between the intuitive and the creative, between you and others, how you're connecting and communicating with the people that you're in relationship with. And this may be like a little bit of cards that are kind of saying like, hey, maybe it's an opportunity for you to kind of step out in a new way. I know we've had Venus retrograde, so a lot of us are kind of maybe possibly reevaluating some of our relationships, how we show up in our relationships. I know we're also going to have the Libra full moon eclipse. So that's going to be something too to kind of keep in mind as we're kind of processing, you know, what it means for us to have relationship with other, who we are in relation to the people that we surround ourselves with. So it seems like the Two of Cups is almost saying like, are you in harmony with the relationships that you have? Do you feel connected with the people that you are supporting at this time? Do you feel like you have chosen to share the love basically that you have within your life with those that really understand you and see you for who you are? So I think with these first three cards, there is kind of this sense of maybe there's a new relationship that is maybe just now beginning, or maybe you're reevaluating a relationship and trying to kind of come at it from this new angle, so to speak. Maybe this is very much about you reconnecting to your intuition, kind of trusting that a little bit more, connecting more to that energy, especially after some trials and tribulations, or feeling a little bit disjointed or disconnected in some way. Now, underneath we have the King of Pentacles. So I think that this is almost saying like, we need to understand what it is that we're working towards, right? I think the thing with the King of Pentacles is that he is very much this energy of being very solid and methodical and logical in the sense of what he has been working towards. So this is almost saying like, ensure that your foundation is stable, ensure that you're connected in ways that make sense for you, that you feel supported, not just at this current moment. Maybe you need to kind of take some time out and re-nurture yourself in some ways, especially like in the physical realm. So that could be ensuring that like your space is in alignment with what it is that you want, that you have things, you know, in order, so to speak, that maybe you have made space for you to have, some of these longer term goals coming together and making sense. I think the biggest thing with the King of Pentacles is that he's very much about that established order and kind of connecting a little bit deeper into that energy and not holding back on this. So I feel like the King of Pentacles is here as a reminder that, this is really about being very strategic about what you're surrounding yourselves with and what kind of life you've created for yourself. Now, next to that, we have Justice. Now, Justice is all about balancing. It is about fairness. It is about that empowerment in the sense of really connecting to that energy. So I had to take a little break, and hopefully I can still make this be a little cohesive. But what I wanted to kind of talk about with these cards, besides kind of explaining what each of them means on a more individual level, is the cohesiveness that we see here. So while the only card that really wants to me at this point really stand out is the Fool, that's kind of kicking everything off. It's kind of showing, sorry, it's going to glare. It's really kind of showing us that we are the ones that get to initiate this energy, but we also have to understand that there is a need for balance, a need for us to feel a little bit more empowered in our personal truth, whatever that may be and however that may show up. So I think overall the things going on at the current moment are asking us to really look at what are we doing? How are we surrounding ourselves with the things or elements around us that are going to be supportive for us to continuously choose what we do moving forward. So at this point in time, there may be some things coming up that are requiring us to kind of tune in a little bit more. And maybe this last, we had a solar eclipse in Aries this last weekend. So maybe that's kind of playing into this energy too, that's making us want to look at, how we identify as individuals, how we're showing up in this energy, what that means for us for the long term, and how to kind of tune in a little bit more into those elements within ourselves. And I think with this upcoming full moon eclipse that we were going to have in Libra, we're also kind of like redirecting a lot of this energy back into what that means for the harmony and balance of the relationships and connections that we have around us, while also taking into account how we're showing up in our lives. So I think that these tarot cards are kind of saying that this is a time for us to really pay attention to, how are we showing up as our real authentic selves, what sort of behaviors need to change, or what sort of things within us need to shift, what sort of things have we prioritized that maybe are currently shifting and changing. And I think that there is a strong need for balance at this time. So we need to just be very aware of where this energy is leading up to and what needs to shift. Now, talking about transformation and shifts, for the oracle cards that we pulled, I do have the transformation card. So I think right now, a lot of us are kind of in the middle of something that is trying to kind of take root. And so I think that this transformation card is kind of reminding us of this sort of energy, kind of saying like something's trying to shift, something's trying to change. We need to move forward. We need to stop hanging back and holding on to energies that aren't really aligned for us long term. So I think the transformation card is an invitation, especially with this other energy of having like the Fool and Justice, where we have to understand what it is that we're growing into, what we need to shift, what is no longer in alignment for us in different ways. And so I think that the transformation card is here, not just as an invitation to understand what needs to shift, but also for us to move with this rebirth, to move with this transformation, this transmutation, this metamorphosis, so to speak. I know shifts and changes are going to never feel that comfortable while we're in the middle of it, but I hope that not just this reading, but also like this time period for you is allowing you to really see what needs to shift and why these shifts have come into play at this current time. So I think a lot of us are kind of feeling not like a pinch, but maybe like this push to kind of shift and really be aware of where this energy is going to take us and what maybe no longer is working out, what we need to essentially kind of walk away from, like the Fool is saying, where we're ready to kind of move into the next thing and not remain stagnant, not remain where we've been. And I thought it was interesting that I got the Owl card, which is all about seer. And I feel like this is also very much about really tuning in, having a much more intuitive approach to how we're showing up and what we're doing with this energy. When I think of owls, I think of, the association with wisdom, with night, with, being able to be almost like quiet as you're chasing after something. And when I think of even like the Page of Pentacles or the King of Pentacles, it's not this like loud, ostentatious, oh, look at me sort of energy. It's more of like that rooted, grounded, under the surface working. It's like the seed that is finally taking root and growing underneath the surface before we start to see anything above the surface. So I think Owl is here as a reminder that maybe we need to be a little bit more aware of where our intentions are headed, where this energy is kind of taking us, how we're showing up in this energy, what it means for us as individuals, as we are kind of tuning into these different elements and aspects of ourselves. So I think with transformation and with the Owl or Seer card is that it's an invitation for us to really pay attention to ourselves, to what we value, to maybe even being aware of, what is your intuition telling you about the things that are going on? What is it that maybe feels the most intuitively connected for you? Like what sort of wisdom have you gleaned from the situation? As well as being very aware of what to do with the things that you've learned. The thing with owls is, they're nocturnal, they're predators, right? So we need to be aware of like our own predatory needs at this time. And I think that's why we have these two kind of like Pentacles cards, kind of buffering this energy between the majors. It's almost saying like, okay, we need to like physically pay attention. We need to be in our bodies. We need to be in our spaces. We need to be very intentional with, what sort of behaviors are we leaning into? What sort of things are we utilizing at this time to kind of expand and grow upon, the things that maybe feel very intuitively and creatively as a choice for ourselves, as well as like what we're leaning into that maybe requires a lot of trust, and also finding that balance, that impartial kind of attitude about things. Because I think like these cards are very much about more like of the, not so much like the feelings and emotions and like really getting kind of caught up in that, but maybe more of like the element of what is rooted and grounded for me and what does that mean for me long term. So I think that these cards that I pulled are very much kind of pushing and urging this sense of being aware as to where is this energy really leading up? What does it mean for me long term? And what should I do with this? So since I don't really use this Loteria Remedios deck, I'm going to kind of look and see what the card says in the guidebook. But I think the thing with this one is essentially it's like femininity, poise, and grace. So even if you're someone who is not feminine, we all have divine feminine and divine masculine traits within ourselves. And so I think that this is really just kind of telling us about creation, creativity. It's really about showing up and being confident and showing up and being authentic to ourselves in a way that doesn't make us feel like we're playing a part or being something else. So I think what this is that it's maybe asking us to look at like what roles are we playing in our lives and what is being required of us at this time, whether it's something that we enjoy, whether it's something that we find that's a little bit more constricted or confining. Pay attention to what that feels like for you as an individual, because I think a lot of us have, maybe roles or expectations or, things that we feel define us as individuals. And those things do affect our interpersonal relationships, as well as like how we show up in different elements of our lives and what we feel like we're allowed to do with this energy. And I know that femininity can be something that is extremely personal and sometimes has a huge cultural influence. Like for me, I'm someone who's Hispanic, Mexican, because of my parents. And so Mexican femininity is something that is very big in my culture. And as someone who has never really fit into that role, so to speak, in a lot of different ways, I've learned over the years that that's just who I am. And so I think with this energy, it's almost saying like, look at what sort of things you're kind of wearing, in the sense of what sort of labels, what sort of expectations, what sort of, influences have you allowed to kind of dictate how you show up. And maybe that is where the transformation is maybe healing some of these different things that maybe we all carry that we don't always understand. Why does that bother me? Or why do I fight against this? Or why don't I just do what is kind of expected of me? And I think having like that transformation card and also this seer card, that is that maybe there's like some wisdom there that it's kind of saying like, okay, let's tune into this. Like, let's not forget that this can be something that can be very beautiful for us, even as we may forget other elements and aspects of ourselves. And it's very much about just kind of showing up with like that grace, that sense of poise, and in a lot of ways, just being a little bit more authentic to ourselves and our experience. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me, Pile 2. I know it may feel a little bit disjointed with the reading, but I hope it still makes sense and that you enjoyed it. And I will see you in the next one. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye. Hello, pile number 3. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that this reading finds you well and that it brings you some guidance and clarity as you kind of move into this energy. Let's see what we have in store for you. I think I may change some of the lighting because it's a little crazy. So we're going to do that. It's a little, not like that's in my face. So we're going to do that. Okay. There we go. Maybe we'll get it at some point. All right, so let's see. What do we have for pile number 3? First card is the 9 of water or 9 of cups. Next, we have the sovereignty of water or the King of Cups reversed. Then we have the 8 of air reversed. Then we have the balance card reversed. And then finally, we have the velocity of earth reversed or the Knight of Pentacles reversed. A lot of reverse cards. I feel like I've been pulling so many reverse cards lately. So I think a lot of us are kind of feeling these retrogrades. All right, so I'm going to pull a couple of oracle cards too, just to kind of see what's going on. So we have move through fear. Let's see. We have a Loteria Remedios card too. So let's see. We have El Bandolón or the guitar. And then one more. And then one more. We have the Hungry Ghost or fear. More fear. All right, a quick little adjustment so that we have everything in frame. So let's start with the actual cards from the tarot deck that I used. So the very first card we got is the 9 of water. Hopefully that is in, not like, there we go. The 9 of water, which is essentially talking about our wishes coming true. This is like our dreams being fulfilled. things really coming together, but there may be something that is still missing. There's something that maybe we still feel isn't quite there yet. So there may be a sense of, while we are very happy that things are coming together, there may be something that's kind of holding us back, or maybe we're holding back in some way. And so I feel like with nines, especially in tarot, there's a sense of like, we haven't really let go of everything all of the way that like we should. So I feel like with this 9 of cups is that we're feeling a sense of fulfillment, but there is still something that maybe we're questioning, or maybe something that we feel is still missing. So I think having the 9 of cups kind of start everything, and with all of the other cards being reversed, that maybe we're starting to reflect upon the things that we've prioritized and how we've shown up in this energy. Now, next to this 9 of cups, we have the sovereignty of water, or the King of Cups reverse. So I feel like this is a card that really talks about maybe we're lacking something, we're missing something, in the sense of maybe intuitively we feel like something's just not really coming together. Maybe there's some emotional elements that we haven't really processed, or something that we're holding back on. Now, with this being like the divine masculine of the suit, you know, the highest expression of the divine masculine, so to speak, maybe there's something within us that's maybe feeling like it's challenging for us to show up in this energy. Maybe we feel like it's hard for us to kind of be nurturing. Maybe we feel like it's challenging for us to kind of be in this like sense of the emotionality that tends to come with the cup suit. So I think that there may be something that we're either wanting to face within ourselves, or that we have to really be aware of at this time. I don't know why it keeps not focusing, because I can't tell. I'm like at this age now where I can't see up close very well. It's great. I love it. And so like my glasses don't work if I'm wearing them and trying to like look at something on my phone. I have to like pull back. It's been a good time. Anyways, with the sovereignty of water reversed, I think that this is kind of a reminder for us to kind of look at maybe where we've lacked some nurturing for ourselves. Maybe there's something that we're just not quite allowing ourselves to have in some way. When I think of these, you know, the cups cards, I think it's so much about intuition and creativity and connection and our relationships, and how we are showing up emotionally in so many different ways. And I think like the kings are, again, they're kind of like that divine masculine expression of the suit. So they are, you know, they've gone through everything. So they have the emotional intelligence and maturity. They have the experience. They know how to kind of show up in the suit's energy without allowing it to be something that is very disruptive. So I think with the King of Cups here, we're kind of, maybe we're lacking something, or we're not just, we're like at the precipice. We're just not quite there. There's something that we're still processing. There's something that we just are realizing we're not quite all the way over. And I think that's why we have this 8 of Air reversed, because this is essentially a card, or this is the 8 of Swords reversed. So this is almost saying like maybe we have felt like we're kind of keeping ourselves stuck in some ways. There's something that maybe we feel like there's some truths that haven't really come to light the way that we had anticipated. Maybe we feel like we're still seeking out some of the truth in some ways. And there is also this sense of feeling a little bit helpless, a little bit hopeless, but maybe it's a more internalized thing. So there may be a lot of anxiety. There may be a lot of like overthinking, overanalyzing, kind of being a little bit out of sync with our own personal energy, and not really paying attention to what that means for us as individuals overall. So I think with the 8 of Air, especially kind of being pushed through with the King of Cups reversed, where there's something that maybe within ourselves that we're starting to realize like, oh, I've missed out on something, or something is just not really falling into place the way that I had intended. So there may be something here that just feels a little bit unfinished, or maybe there's something that's kind of like, I thought this is what I was desiring, or I thought this was what was going to make me happy, or I thought this was what was going to fill the void in some way. And now we're realizing, oh, maybe that really isn't what I wanted, or maybe that really isn't how I wanted things to go. There's I'm almost getting like this sense of there's something that is just not really clicking into place. The puzzle pieces are just not coming together. There's a lack of congruency here. And so I feel like with these three cards, especially with the ones on the bottom, we're kind of still seeing a little bit of like maybe a push and pull sort of energy where things are just not really feeling easy, or they can feel a little bit confusing. Now, we have to also understand we're in the middle of eclipse season. We have all of these retrogrades. A lot of these different planets are shifting signs, and they haven't for a long time. And so a lot of us are feeling like this intense energy with it. And we're kind of questioning, like, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? While also trying to kind of take into account everything that is at play on the worldwide stage. And so I think with the Eight of Air here, especially with it being reversed, is that maybe we're internalizing a lot of our own personal fears. Maybe we're forgetting how truly powerful we are. And so we may be feeling a little bit like disjointed with this energy, because we may be feeling like, well, I thought this was what I wanted, or I thought this was what I needed, and I thought this was what was going to make me happy. But I'm starting to realize that maybe not everything is falling into place the way that I had wanted it to, or things are just not really coming together the way that I had anticipated. So it's making it a little bit challenging. The other thing with the sword suit is that it can kind of bring this sense of being, sorry, my hand is very itchy today. There may be this sense that like things are just too much in your head. Like there's a lot of this mental energy. Maybe you feel like it's hard for you to be truly empowered in your own personal truth. Maybe you feel like it's hard to communicate the things that you really desire and that you're really looking for. And so there is a little bit of like this questioning with this energy that can feel, again, a little bit disjointed, like things are not really falling into place the way that you had anticipated. So you may be really questioning where this is leading you to. Next to that, we have the Balance card, reversed, of course. So this is the card that rules over the sign of Libra. And just like I did for pile number 2, I pulled Bears upright, the Justice card. So this is essentially the Justice card in traditional tarot decks. It's balance in this one, but it talks about balance. It talks about harmony. It talks about fairness. And this being reversed, I think that we're kind of seeing a little bit more of this. Something doesn't feel right. Something isn't coming together the way that we had anticipated. And having this Libra full moon coming up on April 12th, we have this sense of like, again, it's an eclipse, right? So it's almost like saying like, what is it highlighting? Whether it's like maybe there's a lack of balance in our interpersonal relationships and how we're showing up in other ways, that is making us really question, are we actually in flow with the things that are trying to kind of happen in our lives? Or are we still trying to control everything in various ways and not realizing how unhappy that really truly makes us? So when I think of the Balance card, or when I think of the Justice card, especially reverse, I feel like it is very much kind of saying like maybe we're not being quite so impartial with ourselves. Maybe we're being a little bit too rigid, a little bit too stuck on how is this going to look? How is this going to be? How will, I'll figure it out. Like what is coming together here and what am I missing? So I think with this Balance card, especially being the first of or the only major card I pulled for this set of cards, is that right now, a lot of us may feel like things are just not really working in our favor in some ways, or things are, again, not really coming together the way that we had anticipated. Maybe, we have planted some seeds and then come to the realization that not all of them will germinate, not all of them will bear fruit, not all of them will be successful. And that's kind of the energy of these cards. It's almost saying like, I've done everything that I could and I thought everything was coming together the way that I needed it to, but now I'm seeing that there's still something that isn't falling into place the way that it should have been, or something is just not really coming together. And I think that's kind of the crux of these cards. Finally, for the tarot cards, we have the Velocity of Earth, or the Knight of Pentacles. And again, it's reversed. So we may feel like there is a lack of maybe we're not getting a message through. Maybe we're not hearing what needs to be heard. Maybe there's something here that maybe we're starting to recognize and realize, like we're lacking a sense of strategy. We don't have enough experience in some ways. Maybe a new job that we're, kind of going into, especially maybe something that we're like, I had a lot of like big ideas and plans for this. And now I'm kind of realizing, oh, wait, this really isn't for me. Or maybe this really isn't what I want to keep doing. Or maybe this is something that is going to be a little bit more challenging that I need to be worried about at this current time. So I think with the velocity of Earth, there is a little bit of this like wanting to kind of get out there and have something kind of shift and move, but there is something that is just not really falling into place the way that it should. So something is just not working the way that it's supposed to. And there's this like question with this energy at this current moment. So again, it's just kind of feeling like there's something that isn't really falling into place. Maybe there's a lack of strategy, a lack of, maybe the methods aren't coming together. The planning isn't really falling into place. And so maybe we're left to kind of question, what does this mean? What should I do with this? And I think that this is very much the energy of Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde. We're just not seeing a lot of progression physically in some ways, but this is also an opportunity for us to kind of recount our own personal behaviors, to recount like what physically I need to shift in my life in order for me to make room for these things to start falling into place. And so I think with all of these reverse cards, they're kind of really pointing the energy back at us as individuals and kind of saying like, have we done the work? Are we checking in? Are we doing the things that are necessary in order for us to see the things that we want in our lives? In order for us to have a change, we have to make room for the change, and we have to acknowledge that something needs to shift, something needs to change. And when we think of the energy of the Knight of Pentacles, it is very much about, again, being methodical, being strategic. It's not about just going out into the world willy-nilly, right? It is very much about understanding what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to kind of stand up to, a challenge and say, this is what I believe in, this is what I will go to bat for. And so I think a lot of these cards are kind of saying like, if you want the things that you have been trying to manifest or trying to kind of invite into your life, and you're trying to set everything up, there is some stuff that you need to kind of rework and rewire within yourself so that everything can really fall into place. So stop kind of pushing yourself out of like this comfort zone, so to speak, especially without like a good intention or a good plan. I don't want to say intention. We'll scratch that. A good strategy, we'll say, as far as like how you're going to make this happen and how these things are going to fall into place for you. So I think that these tarot cards are kind of saying like, hey, there's some stuff within you that you need to kind of tune into and pay attention to in order for things to really start to fall into place and for you to not feel so out of harmony with yourself or out of balance with what you have going on. What I thought was interesting with these oracle cards is that the very first one that I got is move through fear. I think a lot of us are a little bit on high alert. Maybe there's a lot of anxiety. The energy has just been very exhausting and draining with good reason. But I think that this is kind of asking us to check in with ourselves. When I think of the Nine of Cups, it's a card that really talks about everything coming together and everything working out in your favor because you've done what was necessary. You've made the choices needed in order for these things to fall into place. But I think that there's a lot of fear that many of us don't really talk about when it comes to really understanding what it is to have your wishes come true, your dreams being fulfilled. Some of us don't know how to receive that. And I think this move through fear card is really highlighting a lot of this energy of some of us don't know how to wish for a life of ease because we've never had it. And so if life were easy, it would feel perhaps in a lot of ways more challenging than a life full of challenges, if that makes sense. So I think the 9 of water kicking everything off is maybe highlighting that you have these dreams and these wishes and these desires, and they're coming to you, but maybe you're still blocking your own energy because it's also something that is uncomfortable. When you're someone that maybe has struggled or has, encountered nothing but challenges and difficulties a lot of your life, it can feel very unsettling to have things just be easy. And maybe this is an opportunity for you to almost like retrain your nervous system to receive. And maybe this is why this move through fear card is kind of showing up right now, because it's almost saying, have you moved through these fears? And fear isn't always about doing something that's scary, quote unquote, like something that makes us feel like we're facing down this big challenge. I know for me personally, facing down a big challenge can be just like sitting with myself and saying that it's okay to not have a sense of guilt over taking time out to rest. Those things are more scary to me versus like, having crazy situations that would possibly really stress out other people, where I'm just like, oh, that's cool, whatever, I can deal with that. I always say I'm really good with like high pressure, high stress situations because I can just act and I don't have to really think. I don't really have to be too in like myself, if that makes sense. It's almost like autopilot kicks on and I'm just like, I'm cruising. But with other situations, like, like maybe having to be visible to people, like that's something that's very unsettling for me personally. So I think this moving through fear card is a reminder that maybe there's things within ourselves that we're blocking and not allowing ourselves to kind of level up in some ways, or to really have things easily flow to us because we just haven't had it. And so we don't know what it's like. And sometimes we're more comfortable with what is known, even if it's not what makes us happy, versus having to be in the uncomfortability of the unknown and not really knowing how it'll be or how it will feel. Now, next to that, we have Hungry Ghost, which again, this is a card that really talks about fear. And I love the energy of this card because it's like hungry ghost, right? So it's almost saying like, this is something that is being fed by the fear that we experience, by the blockages that we have within our lives. It is something that needs that. It needs us to not be in our own personal power, to not be rooted and grounded in what it is that we want and knowing who we are as individuals. The Hungry Ghost card is kind of saying like, hey, if you're not going to do what you need to do, that's okay. I want you to be scared. I want you to feel like so distraught and disconnected from yourself that you don't realize that you also hold the key and that you also hold the power to kind of move through these things. And so I think it's very apt to have the move through fear card and then having this hungry ghost card, because it's almost saying like, all those things that you're afraid of and all those things that you're just kind of like holding on to and blocking yourself off from because of fear, like you're feeding this thing that is going to enjoy you not showing up as your authentic self and you not really being rooted in your own personal power and feeling very connected to yourself. So I think a lot of us forget how easy it is to just kind of say like, I don't want to do this, or this is really hard, or this is really uncomfortable. I don't really know where I was going with that, but I was just kind of saying like in the sense of a lot of us forget that sometimes us not shining and showing up as our authentic selves does serve those that will take advantage of you being in a very submissive energy, or to be very like downtrodden and disconnected and disjointed from your purpose. It's one of the things why I really want to share like how I've learned a lot of this stuff and how I've connected and things like that. It's because I want to put the power back in your hands, because we all have the ability to do wonderful, magical, beautiful, and authentic things. But some of us have just forgotten that. So I think this Hungry Ghost card is kind of saying like, hey, like, stop feeding me with all of this stuff, because as much as it's feeding me, it's not something that is of benefit for you. Being in our fear serves no one. I mean, it really doesn't. It's a disservice to ourselves. It is a disservice to our life's purpose. It's a disservice to the world if we don't show up as we're meant to show up, because that's kind of like the whole point of us being here in this like earthly realm. I was going to say hellscape, but in this earthly realm, it's almost saying like we have to show up in this energy. Now, finally, I have el bandolon, which is the guitar. Again, I don't really ever use this deck, so we're going to look inside of the actual guidebook and see what guidance we have here. This is harmony, resonance, and tune. So it is really telling you like, hey, what is your inspiration? What inspires you? How are you in harmony with that? How can you allow things that speak to you right now really truly resonate within you? And I think it's not just about the music element. I mean, I think it does talk about music. Obviously, it's a guitar. So it's like telling you to kind of like look at the new music around you, look at like what is your kind of soul song basically at this moment. I think that maybe it's also a reminder to take some time out to find some peace, to like not be wound up so tightly that you forget your own self. And maybe you just need to kind of pay attention to like what is keeping you so tense, so taut, so like strung up, so to speak, in different ways. So I think that all of these cards are kind of saying like, hey, you're right there. Things are trying to fall into place. The biggest thing that you need to do is just confront the ways in which you're not allowing yourself to kind of move with the music that's being played right now. And how can you move through this fear and not be distracted by the things that are trying to kind of remove you from your own personal power. So I really hope that this reading made sense. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.